Everybody, welcome to a bar on the beach. Welcome to the Primo main street. I am Christopher Gaines. Now, we are gathered here actually because the volunteers made this possible. So, could we all have a round of applause for volunteers? Before we get started, put your cell phones down, put them away, no cell phones, turn them off. It's not fantastic when you have a cell phone out. Cameras, put them down, put them away, no photographs please, unless you want to take one right now. No, okay. Alright, for the real Christopher Gaines, here he is, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Jason Keel.
Thank you very much. Well, it's wonderful to be on this stage. It's wonderful to be with you all on this special night. But it's particularly wonderful for me as an older actor to be here with a young actor. I think the world of this young man, a remarkable young performer. Ben Elliott. Well, what do you think, Ben? I think we should begin, and I think I should tell everyone the story of my life. You can sing along if you know the words. When I was a lad in boarding school, I worked very hard, breaking every rule. They sat me down from 9 to 3 and tried to teach me some geometry. Geometry was not my bent. Now I'm an actor in a Shakespeare tent. Geometry was not his bent. Now he's an actor in a Shakespeare tent. The family business came along, to cement mixing the whole day long. The concrete business did me in. I'm much too artsy for the dust and din. It's much too artsy for the dust and din. I had my fill of wet cement. Now I'm an actor in a Shakespeare tent. He's had his fill of wet cement. Now he's an actor in a Shakespeare tent. Before I learned to tread the boards, I spent a season in the House of Lords. I stood my ground, I had my say, and I quoted Hamlet almost every day. My speeches were so eloquent. Now I'm an actor in a Shakespeare tent. His speeches were so eloquent. Now he's an actor in a Shakespeare tent. My father said, "Go west, my son," so I spent a year or 2 in Edmonton. Once there I taught an acting class, and in the winter nearly froze my ass. So I bid adieu, and west I went. Now I'm an actor in a Shakespeare tent. He bid adieu, and west he went. Now he's an actor in a Shakespeare tent. At last I think I found my home, acting here beneath the canvas dome. Although it's rich, I'll never get by playing Romeo and Juliet. By playing Romeo and Juliet. As long as I can pay the rent, I'll always be an actor in a Shakespeare tent. As long as he can pay the rent, he'll always be an actor in a Shakespeare tent. Well, welcome, one and all, to Gazing Back. It's a wonderful thing to be able to reflect on our accomplishments over 25 years, and I'm deeply grateful for all of you for joining me. I look out here and it's all a selection of my friends, bard friends, people that love what we've achieved, and some even that love me. And I take enormous pleasure that for the 3rd time my darling mother is there again. We'll come to Jennifer later on. In 1989, I was invited to direct a production of Under Milk Wood. And it really was, the group of people was mainly comprised of UBC grads, mainly. And so we put Under Milk Wood on in the Fringe Festival that year. And one evening, in the Fringe Bar on Main Street, I proposed to the group that I had an idea and an intention to start a Shakespeare festival. And I invited them to join me. But where, oh where, did I get that idea? My theatrical awakenings go back as long as I've been alive. I was born in 1952. The Stratford Shakespeare Festival of Canada began as an idea that year with the first season in 1953. Tyrone Guthrie came over at the request of Tom Patterson, and they started it. And it's the largest Shakespeare festival now in North America. It's 3 times larger than anything in America, which I love the fact that it's in Canada. My mother and father were devoted to the theatre. She was the secretary and my father was the chair of a vibrant local community theatre company called the Whips. They were in West Horsley and we lived in East Horsley, Surrey, England. My parents put no barriers between me and performing, and I remember, since I was a little lad, doing shows in our garden, on barn stages, anywhere really, showing off constantly. And my mother, God bless her, encouraged me, except when I would say things and people laughed at me, she said, for goodness sake, don't laugh at him, he'll never stop. So I've acted all my life. In 1966, I played in my first Shakespeare play. I played Ursula in Much Ado About Nothing. And there, can you see it? There's a picture of me. Are there 2, Elliott, or just that one? Oh yes. I like wearing dresses. I've had some fun here in dresses as well, as some of you remember. But anyway, it was the last year, curiously, that my boarding school, Helsbere Point in Sussex in England, I boarded there from 8 to 18, caught the end of the Victorian era Harry Potter schools. But that year, 1966, was the last year the boys played the girls' parts. So I felt like, from Shakespeare to me, the chaps played the girls' parts. Not quite, not quite. But it was an old tradition, and that's what used to happen there. In 1968-69, I gained a position in the National Youth Theatre, and that was a wonderful thing. I didn't particularly thrive at school. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being there. But I found the schoolwork didn't particularly interest me very much. I was very, very happy doing English and history, and when anybody said there's going to be a play, I was in it. If there was a speech competition, I was in it. But there wasn't very much of it. It's not like today. Today they have a full theatre program at Hurst in those days. 1 Shakespeare a year and perhaps something else. But anyway, National Youth Theatre came along, and so in the summertime I was able to go up to London and work with all these young people who had this same, I I would say curious passion, because again, I was in this school where boys were going to be lawyers and doctors and so forth, and I wasn't, and I knew it from a very, very early age. But there we were in the first year in the National Youth Theatre. I was pulled out of a production of the Scottish play. I was in it for 3 days, just rehearsals, and they'd run short of somebody in Midsummer Night's Dream, which was going to tour Belgium, Holland, and Germany, and fantastic. 18 theatres in 21 days, and so that's what I did when I was about 16 in the summertime. And my parents came over to Haarlem, which is just near Amsterdam, and I said to one of the other actors, young fellas in the show, my parents are coming tonight. He said, "Oh, would you like my line?" And it's funny, I shall reference this line again later on in the evening, but I said, "Yes, what is it?" And he said, "It's, I will, my lord." So at the right moment, I was able to say, "I will, my lord," and to the great effect and pride of my parents. Anyway, the following year I was in Twelfth Night, which we did in London, and I lived with 2 or 3 other actors, young fellas, in Clapham. It's now been gentrified. It's called Clam now. But at the time we lived with an Irish landlady who really enjoyed a glass or perhaps a bottle of gin. And so one evening the bottle was consumed, and I had a couple, but the chap playing Feste had about half the bottle. And anyway, he collapsed halfway through the show. And I was his understudy, but of course they hadn't had any understudy rehearsals, a bit like Garden Beach. So I went on, and I played Feste. The good thing was they chose me because the year before I played Feste at Hurst at school, and so I didn't know any of the songs that he sang, so I just sang the songs that I knew. So it was a different production that night. Anyway, as you know, with ingenuity we get through these things, and that's what they did. Age 18, my parents said, when I asked them if I could audition for theatre schools, they said, "Go right ahead." They knew it was time for me to leave school and move on. And fortunately, I got into a couple of them, and I selected the one not in London. I decided to go to the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School. I had 3 years there, tip-top training, very good training. And the sort of people that went to the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School, there's a pretty good list. Daniel Day-Lewis just came after me. Jeremy Irons was just before. I met him coming out of a laundrette once. He was playing at the Bristol Old Vic. He was all spotty and had greasy hair, but he's become a huge star. But he probably said the same about me. Anthony Hopkins was there a bit before us, but the chap that had a huge influence on me, and I loved him very, very much, was Pete Postlethwaite. You can Google him if you like, but he died a couple of years ago. There's wonderful stories about him. But we'll do that at the 35-year marker. I left theatre school in the summer of 1973, and I auditioned for a man called Douglas Campbell. Douglas had this enormous effect on my life. He was a man that was easy to follow, easy to be influenced by. My God, he influenced me. I have so much to be grateful to him for. But anyway, I went up to London. I auditioned at Spotlight, which used to be in Leicester Square, and I got a letter from him a few days later, still got the letter, that said he'd like me to join his theatre company up north near Sheffield, £18 a week, 1/8. So that's about 30 bucks. But, you know, I know it's all a long time ago and so forth. But nevertheless, I was to be an actor ASM, assistant stage manager in that company. And that's what I did for the first year. And I played good parts because they needed people like me. I was young and had a modicum of talent, and that's why they'd hired me. But we became friends, Douglas and I. He'd come back to England from Canada, where he'd been brought over by Tyrone Guthrie, Sir Tony Guthrie, as the first actors of the Stratford Festival. Alec Guinness, Sir Alec Guinness, Dame Irene Worth, Douglas, and one more had come over. And Douglas came for the summer shows, and then he'd go back for the first year or so. Then he thought, this is ridiculous, and he started the Canadian Players, and they played through Canada during the winter time. So he played here for about 20 years and helped to establish Stratford. His mother-in-law, that's a curious, I love the bloodlines that are involved in these things. Douglas came from Glasgow, and he wouldn't call himself a working class boy. His father was a postman, but nevertheless he wasn't a Gordon's boy. I'm proud of that. But he became an artist, and then he had this interest in the theatre and started to drive a truck for the Thorndike Casson family, and that's Dame Sybil Thorndike and Sir Lewis Casson. And they started to tour all over England, or he joined them. And it was the Thorndike Cassons that got him involved in the theatre. Guthrie directing, that's where he got to know Guthrie. And Dame Sybil Thorndike, I might add, is the blue blood of British theatre. And if you take a look in Westminster Abbey, that's where she's buried. I had a wonderful meeting with her once, but we'll do that at 35. But in Douglas's Campbell, in Theatre North, I played Oswald in Douglas's Lear. Douglas played Lear. Can you imagine, in the north of England, Rotherham, Mansfield, Scunthorpe, all these very dreary northern towns. They were stuck in that very depressed era of the north. But nevertheless, it's what Douglas believed in, take the theatre to the people. At the end of all that, in the end of the second year, Douglas said, you should leave here. It's time for you to get out, get on. He believed in me, he spent time with me. I don't know why, but we had this curious connection. I was a bit of a toff, and he wasn't. But there was something about me, there was something about him. That's what friendship is, isn't it? And he said, you need to go. And I said, well, I've got an audition at the Royal Shakespeare Company. He said, well, don't bother with them. He said, you'll just be stuck in a box, and it'll be no good for you. You're an adventurer. You're an opportunist. You're ambitious. Go to Canada. And I said, well, I've been writing to a theatre in Kenya, Nairobi, and they said they'll employ me if I get myself there. He said, don't go to Kenya, for goodness sake, go to Canada. You can really do something there. So he said, take a ship and see how big the ocean is. And he also said, when you get there, you need to take a train across Canada to see how big a country it is. And he sat down on a Sunday afternoon and wrote 6 letters for me on blue ML paper. You remember that? They didn't die that long ago, but they're sure as hell gone now. I'm pretty sure of that. But he wrote 6 letters to people of great influence in the theatre and the arts in Canada. And so I stuffed those in my bags, and with the words of Shakespeare in a telegram on my bunk bed on the Polish ocean liner, the Stefan Batory, I saw a telegram on my bunk bed that said, Esperance Chris, and set on to strands afar remote. That is a direct quote from Henry IV, which we've just done. So I left England with my adventure to Canada beginning May 14th, 1975. I didn't know how much Canada was in love, or beginning to be in love with Shakespeare. There was the Stratford Festival that I told you about. We didn't have a Shakespeare Festival here in Vancouver, or I suspect anywhere else across the country. But Canadians were discovering that Shakespeare was all around them. If you cannot understand my argument and declare it's Greek to me, you're quoting Shakespeare. If you claim to be more sinned against than sinning, you're quoting Shakespeare. If you recall your salad days, you're quoting Shakespeare. If you act more in sorrow than in anger, if your wish is father to the thought of your lost property has vanished into thin air, you're quoting Shakespeare. If you've ever refused to budge an inch or suffered from green-eyed jealousy, if you've played fast and loose, if you've been tongue-tied, a tower of strength, hoodwinked, or in a pickle, if you've knitted your brows, made a virtue out of necessity, insisted on fair play, slept not one wink, stood on ceremony, danced attendance on your lord and master, laughed yourself into stitches, had short shrift, cold comfort, or too much of a good thing. If you've seen better days or lived in a fool's paradise, why, be that as it may, the more fool you, for it is a foregone conclusion that you are, as good luck would have it, quoting Shakespeare. If you think it is early days and clear out bag and baggage, if you think it is high time and that is the long and the short of it, if you believe that the game is up and that the truth will out, even if it involves your own flesh and blood, if you lie low to the crack of doom because you suspect foul play, if you have your teeth set on edge at one fell swoop without rhyme or reason, then, to give the devil his due, if the truth were known, for surely I've a tongue in your head, you're quoting Shakespeare, even if you bid me good riddance to the silly packing. If you wish I was as dead as a doornail, if you think I'm a laughing stock, the devil incarnate, a stony-hearted villain, bloody minded, or a blinking idiot, then by Jove, oh Lord, tut-tut, but me no buts, it's all one to me, for you are quoting Shakespeare. And so, I arrived in Canada, and I utilized one of my airmail letters, and I went to Toronto that very night. The ship came into Montreal, and one of the letters was to one of Douglas's good old buddies, Bruno Jerusi. You remember Bruno? And Bruno was on top of the world at that time. He had beachcombers going on, and he had a food show and cooking show right here in Vancouver. Oh, I suppose we're here. Anyway, I stayed with him for about 10 days, and my lessons in drinking continued from Douglas Campbell to Bruno Jerusi. Anyway, he got fed up with me and sent me down to Stratford, and he said, go and stay with Bill Needles. Bill Needles actually still lives. He was part of that first year, that 1953 Stratford Company. But anyway, I stayed with Bill Needles, and it was a very exciting time for theatre in Canada. Robin Phillips was at Stratford, and he was really engaging, very brilliant man. But I recognized, of course, very quickly that I couldn't I couldn't work in Canada. I had to become, in those days, a landed immigrant. So I managed to, Bill Needles had married into the Massey family, the famous Canadian family. And one of his relations in that family, in-laws, had friends who had ranches in Wyoming and Montana. And she said, "You've got to leave the country, haven't you?" I said, "Yes, I'm going to go be a butler in Boston, I think." And she said, "No. Go down to Montana, I'll give them a call. And you can work on the ranches during the summer." So I did, and they said, "Come on down." And I caught a Greyhound bus, and 48 hours later I got out at 6 o'clock in the morning in Billings, Montana. And for the next 5 months or so, I rode horses, went on cattle drives in the early morning. It was all very romantic in my mind now. I slept in the bunkhouse, ate in the cookhouse. We would early morning get up and, not all the time, but be taken up to the top of the hills and mountains, and we'd ride horseback and gallop across the fields at 4:45 in the morning, and then start pushing the cattle down the mountain to the pastures below. So I was a bit of a rhinestone cowboy that summer. One day, shoulder deep in a heifer, it wasn't actually, the vet was, not me. I got a call from the consulate in Minneapolis where I applied for my immigration, saying that I'd got into Canada as a landed immigrant. I was able to get into Canada again because one of those blue airmail letters I'd sent to Christopher Newton, who was artistic director of the Vancouver Playhouse at that time. And he, because it was from Douglas, knew that something had to be done about this young actor in Montana. And so he went through immigration. They said, "You have to put an advert in the paper." So they put an advert in the Vancouver Sun saying, "Wanted, classically trained, leading young man wanted," for the Vancouver Playhouse. Nobody responded, and so even I sailed. I stayed here for about a month and a half, and then I went to live in, I had Christmas that year in Stratford, and I auditioned at the Shaw Festival, again, one of the letters to Paxton Whitehead, who was the artistic director there, and I was at the Shaw Festival then for 3 seasons between 76 and 79. Douglas Campbell came back to Canada at that time, and he acted at the Shaw Festival and started a TV series too, The Great Detective it was called. But anyway, it was at one of those parties in the late 70s, I think in 79, I was standing outside somebody's home with Douglas. We were on Lake Ontario looking out into the dark lake, midnight, mocking the midnight bell. And the noise of the party inside, I suppose both relatively intoxicated, but he put his arm around me and he said, "Ah, Christopher dear, we're going to do something, aren't we? We're going to do something." I didn't know what it was we were going to do. But you know, I always had this belief in myself that there was something for me to do. And I never forgot that quiet, gentle encouragement and inspiration from somebody I loved and respected very, very much. In 1980, I was invited, actually went before, but in 1980, I was invited to the Citadel Theatre in Edmonton, 78, 79, 80, and I started to play there regularly, and I actually, in my first marriage, I kind of married into Northern Light Theatre Company, and in 1980, they decided to mount a Shakespeare festival there, and they did it on Connors Hill. Any of you that know Edmonton, it's down near the Mootart Conservatory, the glass buildings in the river valley. And the festival was on the slope of Connors Hill, just a simple tent, like about the same size as the one we have in the Campbell Theatre over there, the Howard family stage, I should say. And it didn't have ends on it, the theatre. It just had a stage, and you sat on the hillside. So if it rained, bottom got wet. It didn't rain very much because it was Edmonton in the summer. Or maybe I've forgotten Edmonton. Anyway, I learned from that festival. It was very successful in the first year, and in the second year, we expanded too quickly, and we got to the end of the season, but they'd lost too much money, so Northern Light almost collapsed and they couldn't do it again. 1983, we moved to Vancouver, and I was engaged as an actor in this Shakespeare festival that had started here, called the Vancouver Shakespeare Festival. It was in this park, just over there, rather near, on Chestnut, I think they call it, near Ogden, right on the corner up there. Anyway, the first year, big success. I was an actor, as I say. I played Puck, I played Touchstone in As You Like It, and a part in Othello as well. The season went well. Next year, we did it over here in a much bigger theatre, the same size as our last theatre that we had here. And they expanded the program, they paid people more, just like they'd done in Edmonton. We opened about the same time we opened this festival this year. But we've had 25 years to build our audience. They'd had 2. It rained. There was it wasn't a teacher strike, I don't think, but there was a bus strike and a newspaper strike, and the weather was frightful. And so by early August, in spite of the fact that I was playing Richard III, and maybe it was my performance that sunk it all, I don't know. But we had to close the festival because we ran out of money. But I learned something from the experience of acting in those Shakespeare festivals. I watched the leadership of Eric Epstein and Henry Wolfe, and in Edmonton, Alan Weissel and Scott Swan. I learned from their management and how they'd handle it, and the pitfalls that they had fallen into. During the 80s, as the 80s wore on, 85, 6, 7, other people tried to get it all going again. Charlie Martin Smith's quite a well-known actor and film director. He'd acted in that festival here, and he tried to get it going. But everyone failed. No one got, put a tent peg in. Nothing happened. Just an idea, and let's make it happen. But there's a lot that needs to be done, as you well know. 1988 came, and my father died. And that was the most profound thing that had ever happened to me. And it was a dreadful shock to me and our family, of course. And it was that shock of mortality, I believe, that gave me energy and inspiration. Good things can come from these things. And Douglas's words rattled around in my head as I tried to find my way forward. We're going to do something. The question was in the ether, and the answer came. There is a tide in the affairs of men, which taken at the flood, leads on to fortune. So let's go back to the beginning. Having that drink on Main Street, I pitched the idea of a Shakespeare festival in Vanier Park to the cast, and it grew from there. Organically. That was the secret. Organic growth. Don't force it. Slow and steady. And that's what we've done. So the first season of Bar on the Beach, we created a budget. We invited some community board members to help, including Graham Burnett, who's been an amazing supporter of theatre in Vancouver for decades. I wish he was here. We should give him a standing ovation. We raised $35,000 through a garage sale and a fundraising dinner at the old Alma Street Cafe. Gone now. Plus individual support from family members, from my dentist, my doctor, my insurance broker, and other individuals in the co-op who also came forward with large contributions from their families. But the key funder was the Canada Council, and we haven't heard much from the Canada Council since. But God bless them, they did something marvellous that year. we applied for an explorations grant to the Canada Council, don't have many more, but they did then, to explore the idea. And they thought that was great. I'd been in the theatre 17 years, they thought that I should get one. And so they gave me, for this project, $18,000. And with our other bits of monies that we raised, that was enough. We had to go to the Parks Board, and we spoke to the commissioners. Initially, we requested that we put our festival on Spanish banks, out near that anchor. You've probably been out there. But I remember I sat at the table with the commissioners, and they reminded me, and they said, well, there's lots of volleyball tournaments out there, there'll be far too much noise. Have you ever considered Vanier Park? I went, oh, thank you, what a good idea. Maybe think about that and come back next month. And of course we came back the next month. This is the perfect place to do it. I didn't think they wanted us to do it here because of the last one that had died. The Shakespeare Festival died with debt, I might add. But anyway, we went back the next month and we said, that'll be marvellous, thank you. What a good idea you came up with. And I also asked for a bar. Could we have a bar? And we got that as well, so we got a liquor license. And we rehearsed at the Vancouver Playhouse, which was the beginning of a close relationship, alliance through the years. On the 27th of July, 1990, we mounted a production of A Midsummer Night's Dream. We called the project Bard on the Beach. Bard on the Beach, we called the project. Tickets were $7.50, the price of a movie. And when you do a co-op, you do everything. Scott Bellis, up there tonight, he helped at the bar. Scott's always been brilliant like that. Actors don't like to come out, get out of the dressing room and be with the general public, generally speaking. They just want to do their work backstage and on stage. But he did, and he was great, and so he helped at the bar. The bar made no money at all, so I drank heavily to sponsor it. We all took turns doing security at night. I've never slept so well. I remember being absolutely exhausted, and everyone would go home. All right, Chris, you okay? I'm fine, I'll stay here tonight in a sleeping bag on the front of the stage. No wandering around every 12 minutes, fast asleep. And nobody came. We just had a snow fence, and one of those orange snow fences around. We were safe. We didn't have much to pinch anyway. Anyway, firework nights. We made a fortune on firework nights. How? Well, 1990 was the first year that they had fireworks in Vancouver. It's now been going as long as we have. But the park board hadn't figured out that you needed a lot of blue johns in this park. But they must have put some there. But we had a couple, which we were paying for in our little enclosure. We had the main tent that we rented off the Children's Festival. We had another tent, a yellow tent that the actors changed in. It was impossible to put makeup on because you looked bright yellow. And another front of house tent. As the show got more and more popular, I took all the chairs out of the dressing room and put them in the theatre, so the actors had to do their makeup on their knees. Anyway, firework nights, let's talk about that. So, people started wandering into our site. I directed the play, Midsummer Night's Dream, that's what we did. I directed the play, and people started to walk past me. The show was going on, and into the blue johns that we had. And I suddenly thought, my God, we've got to have these pumped out, and it's going to cost us, and good grief, this is going to end badly. So I stopped the next person and said, excuse me, can I help you? He said, yeah, I'm going to use your blue john. And I said, well, yes, I tell you what, they are our blue johns. You can use it. If you go over here to our concession, and we've got some bits and pieces for sale there. If you'd spend some money there, then you can go and relieve yourself in our blue johns. So people tottered into the johns with these horrid things that we had at our concession in those days. Mr. Big and red licorice and goodness knows what. But anyway, we made a fortune. We had a rotary phone. We took orders on the phone, manned by volunteers of the day, and you could book tickets merely by saying how many you wanted. Then hopefully you showed up, paid for them, and went into the show. One terrible night, one of our volunteers, board member Judy Stevens, was sitting by, like, all we had was a cash box. And the person came up and said, "Look over there!" And she turned that way, and when she turned back, the box was gone. It was a tragedy on a scale that I can't even describe. It was terrible. Anyway, we lost about $100, but it seemed like 100,000 to me. My sister and I, at the end of the season, we returned many of the cans that had been drunk out of, Coke and whatever we had, and we got just over $75, I remember. It was a fortune, and all that went back into the co-op. That tent from the Children's Festival, it wasn't made to open, but I knew that this tent had to open. In Edmonton, we had an open tent. In Vancouver, that first Shakespeare Festival, a closed tent. And I knew we had something to look at in Vancouver, not so much in Edmonton. And anyway, we managed to lift up, shall I say, the skirts or the back of the tent fabric, and we got it about half the way up, so we had a reasonable view. And people loved that, engaged in that immediately, and that's become the template of what we do here. 6,000 people came to that season, and about 27 of us inside the co-op received about $1,200 each. We all had to receive the same. In spite of the fact some had done more than others, that's what we got. Max Wyman, who was reviewing those days for the province, called it good old-fashioned barnstorming Shakespeare. We used that. Vancouver began to fall in love with Shakespeare. And ever since, they've been brushing it up. We're going to sing along with this. The girls today in society go for classical poetry, but to win their hearts you must quote with ease Aeschylus and Euripides. One must know Homer and believe me, Bo, Sophocles, also Sappho, unless you know Shelley and Keats and Pope. Dainty Debbie's will call you a dope of a poet of them all. The stardom simply raving is the poet people call the Bard of Stratford-on-Avon. Brush up your Shakespeare, start quoting him now. Brush up your Shakespeare, and the women you will wow. Just declaim a few lines from Othello, and she'll think you're a hell of a fellow. If your blonde won't respond when you flatter her, tell me, told Cleopatra. If she fights when her clothes you are mussing, what are clothes much ado about nothing? Brush up your Shakespeare, and we'll all come down. The refrain then, here we go. Brush up your Shakespeare, start quoting him now. Brush up your Shakespeare, and the woman you will wow. With the wife of the British ambassador, take a crack out of Troilus and Cressida. If she said she won't buy it or take it, make her take it, what's more as you like it. If she says your behavior is heinous, you can after that encore, we should do a Kiss Me Kate one day, shouldn't we? Ooh, look at that. It's too darn hard. After that first year, we started to recognize how complex it was going to be running Bard with all hands. It had already been difficult enough to give everyone a role in A Midsummer Night's Dream, and I believe that the structure of the company needed to be traditionalized. Our philosophies differed. I believe Bard needed an artistic director who reported to a board of directors and who was responsible for the running of the company. The existing community board members endorsed this view, and we knew that we had to separate from the original co-op. We had to separate, or our creation would die. There was no middle ground. But the bottom line was that we saved the company, and here we are today, thank God. So we got to the second season. We produced As You Like It and A Midsummer Night's Dream. I came into this believing that with my experience that I've told you about, that we should always do A Midsummer Night's Dream. Well, we did it the first year, my production, and then it was Scott Swan's production in the second year. And then I realized we didn't need to do it again for some time. We could keep that play in our back pocket because it's one of those marvelous, genius works that people love to come to. 11,000 people came in the second year, 6,000 in the first. The closing night, one of those famous thunderstorms. I remember C.C. Humphreys, you'll hear more about him by the way. C.C. Humphreys, Chris Humphreys, was playing Oberon, and he was down here doing an incantation, a spell, and nobody could hear anything. The rain, it was just torrential. It was actually coming this way, and it was running down the stage. We had a break stage. It was kind of ridiculous. And anyway, so I decided we're going to stop the show. We haven't done that much over the years, but we did. And so he couldn't hear me, but I was there. Finally, I caught his eyesight, and I said, time out. And so he ran from here to the back of the stage. In those days, nobody cared about safety. They do now. We had mattresses out the back there, and you could jump off the back. It was a classic exit we could make, just jump off and disappear. And that's what he did. He ran to the back and leapt into the air. And at that moment, the lightning struck, not him, but it struck on the mountains there, and he was silhouetted in the night. And that's an image that people can never forget, never forget. At our concession, we started to sell T-shirts. We had the Queen Mother's favourite cake, baked by volunteers. Mum gave us the recipe for that, of course it was the Queen Mother's. CG's, oh yes, we had my aunt's flower cards. She used to make those pressed flower cards, and we used to sell those. And we started to, the volunteers would package sweets and things, mints I remember, gummy bears or something, and in little plastic packets, and we'd sell those. That's incidentally was picked up by the Queen Elizabeth. They picked that one up. So, the board and any volunteer willing would assist in stamping and creating thousands of tickets. We had no money to get some sort of a ticketing organization to work for us. So we just printed our own tickets in a board member's kitchen, you know, several thousand tickets, and they were stuck on the wall a bit like the train station, the way train stations in the old days, they used to pull one out, and that's what we had. It's all very primitive, but it worked. The cast would come out and sell raffle tickets, and I remember we had Air Canada. In those days they would, maybe they would again, Anyone here from Air Canada? Do it again. They would sponsor airline tickets, so we'd get tickets to London, and I can see John McCulloch here tonight. He used to work for Cathay Pacific, in charge of Cathay Pacific here in Vancouver. And through his connections, we got these things. We get Cathay tickets to Hong Kong, all sorts of things. 2 nights at the Ritz Hotel in London. And this is the way we raise money. The cast would sell these raffle tickets during the intermission. Cash flow was an endless crisis because we didn't have any. And so prior to the show, how would you get it on? The only way we got it on until probably 1995, maybe 96, the board of directors would chuck in whatever they could, $5,000, $10,000, they'd get it off their charge cards or if they had a credit line, and it was no guarantee they would get it back, but they believed in it, and by August always they got their money back. But that was absolutely extraordinary what they did. So many of you out here, as you contemplate these tales and stories, you wonder why I'm standing here tonight telling this big story. But you played a part in it. Never forget that. We had casino nights. We had pie and pint nights. We thought we'd hit the jackpot if we raised $2,500. We had gala dinners. All the great entertainers of the city, the artists, Bob Roberts and Linda Cullen, Double Exposure, they'd entertain for us. Judy Forst would come and sing. It was the who's who of Vancouver entertainment, all played their part. I called Douglas in Toronto in 1990 and told him we'd begun a Shakespeare festival. He said, "Call me when you need me, dear." So I did. And in 1992, he directed for us. Bard fell in love with him, and he came back again and again. He was a huge influence on dozens and dozens, hundreds of people. He was my wise counsel for as long as he lived. There is no question, I believe, that Bard is a seed of Stratford. Stratford may not know that, or even think it, but definitely it was the idea of this tented Shakespeare festival. They started in a tent in 53 and built their theatre in 57. We stayed in a tent. All my life, it's been instinctive to me to seek out wise counsellors that have helped on the constant quest for wisdom. I still do it. And I was so inspired a few years ago when I heard Gordon Campbell making a speech at a Book Awards ceremony. He said, "Whatever you do or dream you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin it now." Whatever you can do or dream you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin it now. And essentially, that's what happened. I had an idea, and I committed to it. Once you commit to it, everything changes. And that's what changed. Everybody came alongside, and together, we've made this happen. I want to introduce now someone who has been a central part of making this happen. Scott Bellis came to our front door, lived at the time up on Dumfries Street, 34th and Dumfries, East Vancouver. And in the spring or early summer, as we were casting A Midsummer Night's Dream, Scott had heard about it. He was a young actor. And he came to the door with Jerry McKay. Jerry's actually playing for us right now in Equivocation on the Howard Family Stage in the Douglas Campbell Theatre. And they came together and they found out we were going to put this play on. They said, "Can we audition for you?" I said, "Come on in." And they auditioned for me. And they were young actors making their way. They had a lot of experience. Well, they had early experience. They were already professional actors. And who was I to say no? I could see they were wonderfully talented. So they came into the company. And Scott Bellis, he'll tell you, I don't know how many seasons he's done, but it's a hell of a lot. it's been a big part of his life, a big part of Bard. But Scott is now one of my associates, and I rely on his wise counsel all the time. He directs for us, he plays leading parts all the time. His performance as Bottom is totally extraordinary. I played Bottom a couple of times, but I never, ever was half as good as he is. He is extraordinary. But nevertheless, next year, Scott will be directing. Don't Facebook this out. Don't do anything else. But never mind, we're all friends tonight. But he'll be directing Comedy of Errors on this stage. He's going to come up and tell a story or two. Please welcome someone who's contributed mightily to the success of Barnaby, Scott Bellis.
It's a very different experience for me right now to come out on the stage without a role to play, and to stand up here and relate my experience of being with this company for so long is, in a certain way, overwhelming. I turned 48 this year. I was telling you this earlier in the year. I turned 48 this year, and we started the company when I was 24. Well, do the math. That's half my life. I mean, there are so many things that I remember from the beginning. All the things Christopher was talking about, running out and selling t-shirts at intermission. In the second year, I think I was in charge of the raffle tickets. Setting up the tent was an experience I'll never forget. In the first year, putting the bolts in the frame, tying the canvas on, winching it up and getting up, taking it down at the end of the season, pounding the bars of steel in around into the dirt so that we could put the fence up and outline our territory and all that kind of stuff. And so many stories on stage as well. Of course, you remember the things that go wrong more than you remember the things that go right. Oh gosh, I mean, accidentally throwing my sword at an audience member. That was not a good one. Oh gosh, I used to do this thing as Thisbe in 99 when we did Dream Again, where I would scream, you know, in grief, and I would run down in the audience, and I saw this guy, and he was looking like he was having a very good time. He was wearing these sunglasses. I thought, he looks good. And I used to fall in the lap of the audience and hug them. And when I went up to this guy and I threw myself on him, he yelled in terror. Because he was blind. Which I discovered at that moment. Oh, there's all kinds of things. We had a fire on stage one night during Henry V. We had these little propane-powered campfires, and Henry's, you know, huddled with his soldiers, and it's nighttime, and he's got the long speech about being a king and how hard it is, and meanwhile, one of the soldiers is waking up and picking up his campfire, which is smoldering, and taking it to the stage. But, you know, there's so many memories that are so beautiful and satisfying. I feel very lucky. I didn't know what my involvement would be with this venture in the beginning. I wasn't part of the original group, the original co-op members. They need more people to fill up the cast, and I came and played a mechanical and Dream, and we had a great summer, you know, we got our, whatever, our $1,200, which I guess was about $180 a week or something like that. And, you know, but it was great. I loved it. And I went away and did other stuff. And I was on tour with Children's Theater Company in Kansas City. And I got a message to call Christopher, and he asked me to come back and play puck. And touched him. As you like it. And from then on, I had so many beautiful opportunities, especially comic parts. You know, I got to play Petruchio, and Douglas directed me in that, and he directed me as Master Ford in Merry Wives of Windsor, and I just learned so much about performance, about comedy, about working with audiences and working with other actors, about working with language. And then came what for me was a really seminal experience, was being asked at the end of the '94 season to come back the next year to play Hamlet, which Douglas directed. And I couldn't believe it. Because up to that point I'd been kind of doing the funny stuff, you know. And it was just such a beautiful gift. And taught me so much, and he taught me so much too. It just was incredible. I mean, I know you talk about him being a mentor for you. He was a mentor for me and for so many dozens and hundreds of actors across this country. He taught us so much about the power of words and how to, one of the biggest things he ever taught me was how to be still on stage. Because I was a really nervy, jumpy kid. And to hold yourself with confidence and draw the audience to what you were doing. One of my favorite pieces of advice he ever gave me was after the first preview of Hamlet, we had a notes session with you know, the director of the cast comes out here and gives his notes. And he said, yes, very good, dear boy. When you come out for your bow, don't run on stage. You must walk very slowly like this. You got it. You must walk just like this. Come right down the center. Don't rush it. And they'll love it. And you know, it was amazing. He was full of bits of wisdom and just a joy to learn from. He was kind of terrifying sometimes too. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Like, he ruled the roost. And if he ever got angry with you, it was something to behold. But he always did it because he loved you. It really was true. He did it because he loved you. Should I do a piece? I'm gonna do a piece. This is one of my favorite pieces I've ever done here at Bard. In 2005, I think it was, we did As You Like It. And I got to play Jaques. And Jaques is one of those characters that lies between comedy and drama. And he has this beautiful speech about life. And it goes, all the world's a stage. And all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. His acts being 7 ages. At first the infant, mewling and puking in the nurse's arms. And then the whining schoolboy with his satchel, shining morning face, creeping like snail unwillingly to school. And then the lover, sighing like a furnace, with a woeful ballad made to his mistress' eyebrow. And then the soldier, full of strange oaths, bearded like the pard, jealous in honor, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation even in the cannon's mouth. And then the justice, in fair round belly with good capon lined, with eyes severe and beard a formal cut full of wise saws and modern instances. And so he plays his part. The sixth stage shifts into the lean and slippered pantaloon, the spectacles on nose, pouch on side. His youthful hose well saved, a world too wide now for his shrunk shack. And his big manly voice, turning again towards childish treble, pipes and whistles in his sound. Last scene of all that ends this strange, eventful history is second childishness and mere oblivion. Song's teeth, song's eyes, song's taste, song's everything. And I love that piece because because it envelops everything about life. It envelops everything that Shakespeare is constantly trying to tell us, is that we are here, and we are human, and we are trying to live. And we are trying to find meaning. And it takes us, well, you heard me say it, right? We are born, we live, we strive, and we pass away. And the message I always got from it is, make the most of it while you're here. Make the most of it while you're here. And I think that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make the most that we can out of these plays, which have these beautiful messages about humanity and love and jealousy and hate and fear and joy and desire, and we are trying to share them with the people of this community. And that's why I keep coming back here. And I hope I can keep doing it. And that's about all I have to say.
Thank you so much. Thank goodness we have people who remember it all so well. I certainly do. We opened at 7.
We opened at 8.
I was on time.
You were late.
Ah, yes, I remember it well. We acted with friends.
You acted alone.
A little bird chirped.
It was a cell phone.
Ah, yes, I remember it well. That dazzling April moon.
It was cloudy that night. And the month was June.
That's right, that's right.
It warms my heart to know that you sort of remember still when you do.
Ah, yes, I remember it well. How often I thought of that Monday,
Friday night.
when we had our opening night, and somehow I foolishly wondered if you might by some chance be thinking of it too.
I'm not quite sure if we're on the same page.
That carriage ride.
Nope. What? Wait, what?
You dropped a glove.
You dropped your line twice.
Ah, yes, I remember it well.
Yeah, memory's a funny thing.
That brilliant sky.
Buckets of rain.
Those Russian swords.
I have no idea what you're saying.
Ah, yes, I remember it well. You played Romeo so well.
You did dream, didn't you?
Am I getting old?
Oh no, not
raised the tent, we did the play, the seeds of barn were sown that day. Ah, yes, I remember it well. Parts I've played for other people, done a few. I should tell you that Scott helped put all this together, and with Ben, the three of us collaborated on this and pieced it together, so thank you, Scott, for that too. But in the very first year, in 1990, Scott told me before his contract began, we didn't have a contract, I don't think, whatever it was, he'd be there. He told me one day he had to go for a wedding or something like that and couldn't be there, so I said I'll play that. So I played flute for him, Thisbe, in Midsummer Night's Dream in 1990. Paddy Allen, remember Paddy Allen, done a lot of parts for us down here. Patty was playing the Queen in Cymbeline, and one day she phoned me in the late afternoon and said, "Chris, I'm ill." I said, "Never mind that, come on down to the theatre, Doctor Theatre, it'll all be fine, the show must go on." God bless her, she showed up at the theatre. She got a taxi and opened the door below the Howard family stage over there, and opened the door of the taxi and vomited all over the place. And so we recognised she couldn't go on, but of course the show, it could go on if I played the Queen. Dean Paul Gibson had directed it, and so I said, "Shall I wear her dress?" And he said, "No, no, no, no." Anyway, so I played the Queen, and I was curious, Queen with a beard, but never mind. The show went on. People say it wasn't bad. Dion Johnston. Dion is now a big star back at Stratford. I might add, he played a fellow there last year. But Dion was in 2001. He was in Taming of the Shrew playing Lucentio, and he didn't show up for a fireworks performance. In those days it was a 6 o'clock show, as many of you remember, and he wasn't there, so I said, "Well, what are we going to do?" And I was sitting on the front of the stage, I was playing Christopher Sly, and I said, "Well, I'll play it." And so I told the audience what was going to happen. I got up, did my first little bit, and grabbed a script and started to read Lucentio's lines, the Jude lead. And anyway, he had a huge opening speech, and I got about 4 lines into it, and I was holding the script further and further away. I guess I was beginning to get problems with my eyes in 2001. And anyway, I stopped because I couldn't go on. I turned to the audience. "Anyone got any spectacles?" And about 9 people dashed towards the stage and gave me a pair of reading glasses, and the show went on. Dion showed up, and big round of applause, and that was that. AJ, Alessandro Giuliani, wrote that glorious music for The Tempest. It's just fabulous. And Alessandro was playing Lysander for us up at Mission Hill, when we did the Mission Hill Midsummer Night's Dream. And his father died, the great John Giuliani, so he left the show for a week, and I went on as Lysander. Again, it was one of these rather distorted things. They were at least half my age, the rest of the lovers, but never mind. Haig Sutherland, awful brat that he is, he plays Thisbe in our production of Dream this year, with the collapsible breasts. Many of you have seen. They go pop. But anyway, Haig Sutherland was playing Demetrius, I was Lysander, and halfway through the quadrille, the scene of the lovers all over the place, he grabbed the script out of my hand, and I stood there, and I went, "What do you want me to say now?" And everybody screamed with laughter. And anyway, we invited him back anyhow. Alan Morgan, I went on as the Bishop in Richard II a few years ago. I got my great moment at the Taming of the Shrew that same year, 2001. The actor playing Petruchio just got to the great moment when Kate comes in at the end of the play and he's victorious, he's won the bet. And he went to his knees saying, "Oh, I can't go on." And so we dragged him off stage. And nice. And I turned to the audience and I said, would you like us to finish the play? Huge round of applause. I said, well, I tell you what, I'll get a script and I'll play Petruchio. Well, this was a marvellous opening for me because the lines that Petruchio has coming up have been my favourite lines. I quote them often, sometimes at dinner parties, and offend people. And so I was able to say to Gillian Fargie, who was playing Kate, after she did that whole speech about placing your hand underneath your husband's foot, a difficult speech, and I was able to stand up, puffed up, and said, "Why, there's a wench. Come on and kiss me, Kate." I gave Gillian Fargie a big smack. Anyway, I went on for Christopher Weddell. Oh, there's me with Kim Campbell. Yes, she became the Prime Minister. Look how long my hair was. Looks awful, doesn't it? Never mind. Christopher Weddell, I went on for him a few times. But the best story is this one. In the production that Scott talked about when he played Hamlet in 1995, I was not in that show. Doug was here, Douglas had directed it, and it was bloody good. Everybody loved it. We were in previews, and it was just great. Douglas was playing the Ghost and the Gravedigger, and so on. I was out here having a Greek salad at the time that sort of imprinted on my mind, and Stephen Courtney, stage manager, still here, it was his first year in 1993, and he suddenly dashed over to me about 7:30, the show was at 8 o'clock. "Have you heard?" I said, "No, what?" He said, "Well, Laertes, while cycling to the theatre, has been struck by a truck and broken his leg." So I immediately dashed backstage, and Douglas was standing there looking solemn and fierce. And he said, "I'm so sorry, dear, we're going to have to cancel." And I knew, I said, "Good grief, all I'm thinking about is money." And I said, "We can't cancel." And we have to give all these people their money back. We can't do that. And anyway, so I said, "Well, I could play Laertes." He said, "Well, all right, dear, all right. One, two." And so the stage management dashed about, and they got a few bits of sort of iconic clothing, so I didn't look quite so daft and out of place. And he gave me a script, and various people, stage manager Douglas, explained to me more or less what happened, where it had to go, and so on. It was all written mostly on the script. Anyway, so the first half went through, and this was one of the first times, incidentally, in theatrical history that the actor playing Laertes looked rather older than his father, Bellis. But anyway, the first half went on very, very well, and I came off stage, and people were saying, "Oh, Christopher's marvellous, well done, you've saved the day." Thank you so much. As you well know, pride comes before a fall. And I wish somebody had said, concentrate, don't listen to what they're saying, you've got important things to do. Anyway, so I went on stage for the second act. Crowd really enjoying, giving me a round of applause, spurring me on. And I saw this next entrance. I had to jump into the grave I had to pick up Ophelia, it said in the script, pick her up, and give her a kiss. It's the last kiss, she's dead. Pick her up, and last embrace. And then at that moment, Hamlet, with Scott, who's coming over here, is going to come up. You have to jump out of the grave, and you have to attack him, which I did. But I was also cast these 4 huge young men, whose job it was at that moment to pull Laertes off Hamlet, which they did. However, in the unrehearsed violence of the moment, my script went landed on the other side of the stage. So I stood there, and other people were talking, and we're all right, stay calm, keep calm, carry on. And anyway, people started to leave the stage, and then Claudius, the king, started to talk to me. And he told me how I should poison the end of my sword, and so forth. And then he said, wilt thou do this, Laertes? I realized it was now time to go back to the script. I went across to the other side of the stage and I picked it up, and thank goodness it opened at the very page we'd left quite some time before. And I looked at it, but there were no words there for Laertes, so I looked ahead. The audience began to titter. Then it all went very quiet, and the stage manager called me up there and said, page 121. I looked for page 121. I found it. I looked there, looked for Laertes. There's nothing there. So I looked back at him finally and said, not in this script. Now, Douglas Campbell was standing there in the wings. Scott's already told you he was a ferocious man, powerful man, foul temper. Anyway, he's getting ready to make his entrance because he was playing the gravedigger. He had to bury her. And anyway, he bustled up onto the stage, got up and very irritably grabbed the script out of my hand and started to look for the line. A couple of years later, he had his cataracts removed. But at the time, without his spectacles and poor eyesight, he was as incapable of finding the right place as I was. So finally, the king, Claudius, was standing there. He comes over, looks at the script, turns to the correct page, and I was able to answer the question that he'd asked me quite some time before, and I was able to say, I will, my lord. In 1998, whilst in Ashland, Oregon, great Shakespeare Festival, if you like a little trip down the coast one year, it's a great pleasure to go there. I saw a 7-person production of Measure for Measure. And on the back of a napkin, I did a little budget, and I figured we could afford to do this. It required the board to take a great leap of faith, but we couldn't do the plays that are rarely done. We couldn't do them on this stage. I felt we couldn't do Pericles or Cymbeline, and some of the others that we covered, the lesser-known histories and so forth. We just wouldn't make it here. We needed another theatre. So I was able to encourage the board to agree to a second theatre for the 10th anniversary season. This allowed us to do all the plays, therefore. We christened the theatre the Douglas Campbell Theatre just this year, and I can see Paul and Darlene Howard up there. Darlene is now on our board, but it is them that have been so generous to our Shakespeare Festival, and we're able to call it the Howard Family Stage. Thank you, Paul and Darlene. Our family stage at the Douglas Campbell Theatre. It's a great fit for us. But this started to make all the difference to our Shakespeare Festival. And with the dawn of a new theatre, my sense of playing Shakespeare changed. I was afraid of conceptualized, contextual versions of Shakespeare. But in my growth and confidence, and with good ideas, good people. We've done some marvelous contextual productions, and I think the audience has grown with me. Believe me, you could go back. My friend Thomas Roach, who worked with us for about 10 years, I used to write in the AGM reports, we shall never do plays, you know, with people wearing what I'm wearing now. And of course we've done lots of that, and it's been wonderfully successful. But anyway, here's a few that I pick out as my favorites, and I know you've got yours. But one, the game changer for me was the spaghetti western of The Tending of the Shrew with Miles Potter put on it. It was a huge success. Last year, Kim Collier's Hamlet with Jonathan Young. Dean Paul Gibson's Midsummer Night's Dream this year is a redo, if you like, reimagined, yes, thank you, of 2006, Meg Rose Tempest. We did it over there in 8, and we've reimagined it here in this big theatre for now. The Merry Wives of Windsor, Ontario, which we did 2 or 3 years ago. Huge success. You're in there. Well done. And it was a huge success. In fact, it won Production of the Year, didn't it, in the city. And anyway, what was that? Oh, Scott played Ford. Again. Yes, that's right. Yeah. And what a performance, my God. What a performance. Barton Beach now has a budget of $5.5 million. Education at Bard is flourishing. Young Shakespeareans is very hard to get into. We're trying to open it up for all sorts of people. We have all kinds of bursaries available. People have been very generous in supporting that. Riotous Youth this year, our new program. Phenomenal success. These wonderful young people that we're able to nurture, and they're able to help us too. They did all the nutshell talks this year. Our volunteers, I don't know what the hours will be this year, the volunteers have sponsored these 3 performances of Gaze and Drag. But the volunteers log, I don't know, 13,000, 14,000 hours, given time, thousands of hours. We've done every Shakespeare play, but 2 of them, Coriolanus and Henry VIII, we'll get them done. We've expanded our programming, Elizabeth Rex, Equivocation. Next year, you'll be able to see C.C. Humphrey's new play, which I shall direct over there, Shakespeare's Rebel. Very exciting. We're doing a new play. It's wonderful. That'll all be announced officially, by the way, next Saturday night. We replaced this theatre with your generosity and help, the BMO Main Stage Theatre in 2011. The Wine Festival, the ending of the Vancouver Playhouse, although desperately sad for the city, and probably shouldn't have happened, we have been the legacy of the Playhouse lives on through Barton Beach. The Howards purchased the costumes, 49 years of costumes, and donated them to Barton Beach. The White largest costume collection, wardrobe collection, I don't know, probably in Western Canada. The Wine Festival, they selected us out of 50 different options, and they're a huge part of Barton Beach now, and they will come with us, and I'll explain that in a moment, into West First. And also, of course, when I say West First, 162 West First is where the Playhouse would have gone if they survived and lived. But we're going to go in there instead. It's a bonus density amenity space. It's now close to 50,000 square feet, and there'll be a theatre in there which the Arts Club will own and operate. It'll be their third stage. The Review Theatre they will let go. The third theatre will be in the West First Theatre Centre. And there'll be a production centre for us. We will stay in Vanier Park. Don't misunderstand this. We are here in Vanier. This is where we put on our plays, but we'll put on a play a year perhaps in the new theatre at 162 West First, which is right in the Olympic Village adjacent to it. We will have in there the offices for Bard on the Beach. We'll all go and work there. The current building, when we leave it and close the door, it may fall down. It's a city building. It's all right. It's a home. It's a home. You've got to have a home. There'll be rehearsal rooms of a size and scale, 40 by 60, that you can put on big productions, like we put on. We'll have a smaller breakout rehearsal room. We will have a costume shop where we store costumes. We'll have a costume shop where we make costumes. And the wine festival will come with us into our office space there. So we'll be together, and they will lease from us. And that's a very, very good thing. So the Playhouse, the sadness of the loss of it, was actually very fortunate. We've been very fortunate from that, and we won't forget the Playhouse because they'll live on through us. And so, now we embark on the next quarter of a century. Who will be standing here in 25 years' time? Who will be sitting there? I don't know. It's a mystery. When Bond began, it was a very good year. It was a very good year for a Midsummer Night's Dream and soft summer nights. We'd act under lights, under canvas sheen, Bard's first co-op team. When we turned 3, Douglas Campbell came to play. It was a very scary year. His temper ran fast, whiskey downed by the cast. His expertise ran deep. We played for keeps. When Bard was 3, as the 90s wore on, we built our reputation. They were very good years. We added the stage. We were all the rage. Audiences of every age. But village tents blew down and tarnished our crowd. I got a call about 6 o'clock in the morning from our security man saying, "Christopher, you have to come down here now. Bard is blowing away." It was we just on the final performance of the Scottish play, and we had Dream on that coming night. And you know what I am about not giving up performances. I came down, and this place, not the theatre itself, it remained standing, the main stage. It was before this theatre, it was the last theatre. But the village itself had largely blown down. Our offices, we used to have our offices down here, where we would all work. They had stayed up under a tent, and the dressing tents had stayed up. So we cleared all the mess away, moved it away to wherever, and a whole herd of volunteers, board members, bar volunteers, whoever came to help. And we went on that night and we did our final performance of A Midsummer Night's Dream, 1999. During during the intermission, the power in the village went off. The coffee was hot, and tea and wine and this and that, and so we were able to serve that because I drove my car around to the front gate and shined the headlights in. So I don't know how people managed in the Blue Johns, but that's another story. When the millennium turned, we had a very good year. I had a very good year because I met my wife, my Jennifer, dear. We fell in love, firework plenty above, and that's quite enough. But when the days grow short, in the autumn of the year, we drink Sand Hill wines from fine old kegs, from the brim to the dregs, and it pours sweet and clear. So many generous volunteers. I thank you all, my dears.